Welcome, everyone, to our latest Site Leaders Connect Insight interview. I am excited today to speak with Adriana Garza, who's going to speak about leading a culture of innovation. Great topic. Adriana, if you could please introduce yourself and tell us, why did you choose to become an educational leader?
So my name's Adriana Garza. I'm from San Antonio, Texas. And I chose to be a leader because of my first principal. She really saw something in me that I never even knew was in me. And she kind of tapped me to start doing some leadership activities, leading things at school. And I started to really feel like, wow, I could do these things. I never really thought I could. And once I saw that I could impact more than just the kids in my classroom, that I could actually impact the whole school, I was hooked. And so after that, I decided to just go ahead and pursue the leadership direction. And so I just jumped right in.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that story. And what I love about that is it inspires us as leaders to remember that we do make an impact, not just with a greater amount of students, but with potential leaders. So that's a great reminder of that as well. So I know today you wanted to talk about building culture and a culture of innovation specifically, which is a wonderful topic because it all starts with culture. So can you share some insight you've gained regarding this topic that may be beneficial to our viewers?
Yes. I think it's so important right now at this time in education that we really start to think about how what we're doing in schools and how we're teaching and how are we kind of getting kids ready for the future. You know, we know that the jobs of the future, we don't even know what those jobs are going to be. I mean, things are starting to be all done by computers, and you go to restaurants and now you don't even have a waitress. You order stuff with a little machine. And so the jobs are changing. Things that the job we were preparing kids for in the past are not the same anymore. So as leaders, we really have to think about how are we preparing kids for jobs that we don't even know what those jobs are going to be. But we do know the skills they'll need, problem solving and critical thinking. And so if you think about culture, and typically in schools, especially in the past, there was always a culture of compliance. We rewarded compliance, in teachers and in kids. As long as if you walked into a classroom and it was nice and quiet and everybody was working silently, it was like, oh, high five. That's awesome. You're doing a great job. And your kids are great too because they're nice and quiet. Well, that's really not what we need to see anymore in classrooms. We want to see kids collaborating. We want to see kids using technology. We want to see teacher more as facilitator in terms of, instruction. And so how do you facilitate that kind of a culture in your building? I mean, I think that's a big mind set shift. And so as a principal, that was one of the things that was really important to me. And a huge part of it started with creating a culture of safety. I felt like as a principal, I needed to make sure that teachers knew that I didn't know it all. And that it's okay not to know it all, that we're all learning together. And that if we made a mistake, that was okay too. And if I made a mistake, I wasn't afraid as a principal to admit that to teachers. It wasn't uncommon for me to be in a staff meeting and say, somebody called something to my attention and said, we did this and that didn't work. I'd say, you know what, that was my decision. Not a great decision. I'll get it right next time. But having that kind of a culture where people feel it's okay to make a mistake starts that whole ball rolling for teachers to feel safe to take the risks that they need to take in their classrooms to start changing things. Because again, going back to that whole compliance piece, if we try to encourage teachers to be creative and try new things, but yet we're still on the realistic side or kind of the, what we're actually doing, because there's one thing to say one thing and then do another. And if what we're doing is still rewarding compliance and still not being happy if things aren't exactly the way that we want them to be, well, then people are not going to feel safe in trying to be innovative and trying to take risks in the building. So I think that's a huge part of that shift in culture is creating that sense of safety. We're all learners. I will learn as much. A principal can learn as much from teachers as a teacher can learn from a principal. We're all in this together. So having that, I think, really opened the doors to innovation in our building. It was really cool to kind of see things start to materialize based on what teachers wanted. For example, they'd see, or I might, on Facebook or on Twitter, I might, show a picture of a classroom, that had like flexible seating, or and then teachers would see it and say, I like that, I want to try that. And it'd be like, okay, yeah, sure, give it a try. And that's the other part of it too, is that, you just kind of jump right in. Sometimes we want to wait and we think, well, it's not time yet, or we better read a book about it first, or we better, sometimes you just have to try things. And again, if it fails, well, you get up and you dust yourself off and you think, okay, well, that one didn't work. But, that you're willing to try stuff because that it's going to be something that will change the environment and the classroom. Just a simple change like flexible seating, which that's one of the things we played with in our building, was the kids loved it. They loved that they had different kinds of chairs, that they could sit low to the ground, that they weren't just all in rows anymore, and they were able to be comfortable as they were learning. We experimented with grading practices. We studied that. And so it's not just that you're going to jump in and willy-nilly do stuff. I mean, there is some studying involved, but it is the idea that we're open to anything that is going to be good for kids, that we feel like, this is an antiquated thing, and, that we're questioning that old, this is the way we've always done it. So many times it's like, well, we've always done it this way. And well, you have to ask yourself, well, but is that really the best way to do it? Is that good for kids? Is that good for teachers? Is that making our school the kind of school that it needs to be for our kids? So it's really was a lot of fun to kind of build that culture. And it led to all kinds of really exciting things in classrooms.
That's excellent. I love so much of what you said, especially leading with the safety and making sure that teachers feel safe. And it sounds like you've been modeling risk taking as well, which is also a great thing. I noticed you talked a lot about the impact on students once these changes were made. And were there what was the impact on teachers? Did you find that not only students benefited from these changes, but how did teachers change? Did their growth mindset increase? Did they become more unified, more focused on student learning? What were the impacts with this culture shift on them?
Yes, I would say yes to that, to all of those questions. I really did see for teachers, number one, that they felt empowered. They felt they had a voice. And that was really part of that whole culture of innovation. I mean, as part of the work, we would have either like a student panel where we'd be asking kids, their opinions about things, or at times we would have a teacher panel because we'd bring in principals and because we were doing learning walks in our building and going and visiting classrooms and kind of checking out, the stuff that was going on in the rooms. And so they'd get a chance to kind of hear the teacher's perspective. But teachers really bonded together. And that was a huge, I think, part of the foundation of the work, is that we were a PLC school. And so, kind of breaking down those walls of isolation where, in the past, teachers were just planning together, but then they'd go into their room and then just do their own thing, and basically every man for himself. We saw that, working that way is really working harder. And when you get teachers together to collaborate and share ideas and feel safe about sharing ideas, really great things happen for kids. But, when you, and I recently left the school, I'm actually not the principal at the school anymore. I was there 6 years. And now I'm the director of leadership development. So I'm working at central office, working with principals, and creating great opportunities for principals to learn and grow. But I know that when I left, the teachers expressed to me just what it meant to them to work in that kind of an environment and that kind of a culture. They really, from their hearts, talked about how much they grew as teachers and how much they grew as leaders. And I tell them, it was a win-win. I felt the same way. I felt so blessed to work with them because they were always so willing. It's funny because we went through a training for PBIS. I'm not sure if you're familiar with
Sure.
PBIS,
Mm-hmm.
but part of it, when you're going through the training, they say, you have to go back to school and you have to make sure that you get 80% of your staff to agree to do this. And you go with a team of about 10 teachers from your school to the training. And I remember we were sitting at the table and they all looked around at each other. They were kind of puzzled. And because the thought that 80% would not, that was a given because we'd already built that culture that, that people had a voice and that we did things with a purpose. That was also huge for us, and I said that to teachers all the time. The work that we do is purposeful. So if anytime that we get together, there's always going to be a purpose. We would never waste your time. We wouldn't call you to a meeting to waste your time. If we bring you in, there's a purpose. If we do a program, there's a purpose. So to them, it was very puzzling to think, really, like 80% wouldn't even want to. They didn't even get that. It was so powerful to watch that teacher leadership just blossom. It was wonderful.
That's excellent. Yes, teachers as leaders is definitely the way to go, and that collaborative culture is key. One thing that I find occasionally is leaders that struggle with, how do I have a collaborative culture where teachers are collaborating together and still give them that autonomy and that voice? And so is that something that, how did you accomplish that so that teachers felt that they were valued as individuals for their individual strengths, but also saw this team vision, this unifying need for collaboration, and moved forward with one vision?
We did some work in our building on, before we even got started, with using norms of collaboration. And so Robert Gormston has some really good ones that we use, and he works a lot with Solution Tree. He does that Lemons to Lemonade book. So he does a lot of work with teams. But the norms, the typical norms that we see in buildings are like, be on time, come prepared, and kind of the common, like, professional behavior, actually, right? That's professional
expectations. Yeah.
Right. And so that's kind of the stuff you see on norms. And we talked about how the norms that we needed to use had to be different. And that's something that teachers, I think, in teacher preparation programs, no one's really talking about those skills, the skills that you need to collaborate. And so we, for example, one of them is presuming positive intentions. That's one of so we said, when we're at a table and we all have our ideas, like what you're talking about right now, like maybe one person has a very strong opinion about something and the group might not feel that way. We always have to remember and presume positive intentions. We all care about kids. We're passionate about kids. And that's why we have such strong feelings and ideas. So it's not that we're against each other, but when you presume positive intentions like that, then, and even when you say it, like if we're about to have a tough meeting, we might even remind everybody before, remember that we're all here with goodwill. We care about kids. And so when you have that mindset, it kind of lets you, take a little deep breath and think, okay, I'm going to have a more of an open mind about stuff so that they can better negotiate some of those decisions that they need to. But in the end, one of the things that we talked about in terms of that is that the collaboration is around the what, about the non-negotiable standards that the kids had to know and be able to do. But that creativity, the how, we would never take that from a teacher. Teachers all have their creative ideas, and so they can share ideas. But if you had one that somebody really didn't want to do it, but you really wanted to, well, that's your how. That's the art of teaching. And that's something that you should never try and kind of, pull away from the table.
I love that you said that. I truly believe that teaching is an art and not a science. Mm-hmm. And you really spoke to that, how the PLC process is not stifling to creativity and to individual strengths for teachers. And so I love that message because it's one that I speak to as well. And I love your ideas. I think I'm going to bring some of those ideas about rethinking our norms to be deeper, presuming those positive intentions. I love that. So, well, we do want to make sure that we value our viewers' time. So I appreciate all that you've shared with us. What are some places that you would recommend leaders go to, people to follow, blogs to follow, books to read, etc., for additional information on building a culture of innovation?
I think one of the big go-tos, and I have his book here that is, I'm not sure if you're familiar with George
Yes.
Couros, but this was just such a big, to me, it just made me my mind took off when I read his book. And so I do follow him on Twitter because he's posting every day, he blogs. And what I love about that is that it's quick. You know, we're all busy, whether you're still a principal or a central office or a teacher, you know, we don't have a lot of time. And so to me, I feel like Twitter has really been a game changer in terms of learning, because I can still continue to learn at a pretty fast pace, and I don't have to commit to reading a whole book. I can read a quick blog and it'll get me thinking about something. So I would definitely look at his book would be a great one to read. It's not a hard read. And then I would follow him on Twitter. And then after that, I mean, I'm pretty active on Twitter, and you just kind of start seeing who kind of has the same thinking as you do. I know my teachers, you know, we got them on Twitter. And so that was one of the other kind of innovative things that we did, is that, you know, we'd have meetings on Twitter instead of meeting in the cafeteria. You know, we would say, we're going to have a Twitter chat, and we'd all be able to be where we were at. And so, you know, just doing things differently like that. But I think that that's a great way to grow your learning network, is get on there, just start seeing who it is that is kind of thinking about the same ideas that you're thinking of, and you start following them. And from there, I mean, it's just grown for me. I'm just following several people, lots of people. I mean, if you look at how many people I'm following, that just every day, I mean, they just put something up and I'm like, ooh, and I started blogging actually. And that's another thing that I would really highly recommend. I started blogging because I was on a state visioning committee. It's 60 principals in Texas that are really working on innovation in their buildings. And so as part of that, we started blogging, and that has been I love it because it lets you reflect and it lets you put your ideas out there. And if nobody reads them, that's okay. You know, it's just, you still, you know, you're still kind of doing that for yourself. But eventually people do start, you know, they'll say, oh, you know, I read that, and they're commenting to you. So I would even recommend that too, is start thinking about blogging. And it could be short. It doesn't have to be a long page thing. It could be a paragraph, and put your thoughts down and start getting ideas from other people.
Oh, I love that. So what you spoke to is following others, but then taking that and reflecting, which is an excellent skill as well, on that, and taking that to the next level and blogging and sharing. So I love that. I definitely would echo George Couros, amazing educator to follow. Certainly has inspired me in many ways. Wonderful, wonderful, authentic leader. His blog is featured on our Site Leaders Connect website. I have a link to his blog because I definitely agree with you that he's the top-notch edu leader to follow. Also, I would encourage our viewers to go to siteleadersconnect.org and look at our Edu Leader database, where there are many educational leaders on there to follow as well. And again, love what you said about blogging. I'm a writer, so my, you know, I have an English degree and I love to write. And so my blogs are sometimes a little lengthy and I think are intimidating to those that are starting blogging. But I agree that not everyone's like that. And some people, your blog can be like sketch notes that you created. Your blog can have one paragraph or 2 sentences and then a video. It doesn't really matter. I mean, and so I love that you said that, and I hope that that inspires others and empowers them to start blogging as well. So Adriana, I want to thank you so much for spending time with us and sharing your insight. I think this was an awesome episode, and I look forward to reading your blog and hearing from you more in the future. Any closing thoughts to inspire leaders to build that culture of innovation?
I think that it's so worth it. I mean, when you start seeing the benefits of it, when you see the creative things that teachers and kids are doing, I mean, you just get chills. So I say jump in. Don't even worry about, what if it goes wrong? Just do it. Just jump in, and you will see that it'll make school so much fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Adriana. Again, I encourage everyone to go to siteleadersconnect.org. And thanks again, and have a great day.